It's so sad that he's the only friend she has. My nose itches when I have a lot of opinions. Hello everyone, it's Anna, also known as Book Anna, and today I decided that I want to talk a little bit about some of my unpopular book opinions. This one is going to be just the books that I disliked, but I plan to do books that I like that nobody else likes, and some tropes that I like or dislike. Anyway, this is the first one. I have 10 books on my list, and I put them from my least controversial to most controversial as I see it. So yeah, let's just get into it. Okay, so starting off, I have one of the most popular books in the whole world, probably because everybody needed to read this book for a book report or something, and that would be The Catcher in the Rye by J.D. Salinger. As everybody else, I also needed to read this book for my high school book report, and I didn't like it. I feel like this book is very polarizing because I talked to people that love this book and it's one of their favorites, and I talked to people that hate this book, and I am in the whole dislike this book. I don't hate it with my whole heart, but because it's so polarizing, I put it on number 10. Why I didn't like this book is just I didn't care for Holden, our main character. I didn't want to be in his head. From the beginning to the end, he's just talking like, he's so mature and he knows everything, and really he's just a student that is trying to find himself and try to find out what the life is actually. I don't remember quite well, but I just didn't like him. I am somebody who cannot read a book if I truly despise the main character of the book, which will come again later. But yeah, I just didn't like him. I don't remember, as I said, the book, so it wasn't a very memorable book for me. I get why it's important read in high school, and I know why we read it, and I know there's a lot of things you can get from it, but that just wasn't enough for my reading experience to be better than what it was. Next book I actually have with me because I paid so much for this book when it came out, and I can't part ways with it because I like the cover of it, but I didn't like the book. And that would be Lapvona by Otessa Moshfegh. A few weeks back, I put out a video, my Italy vlog, in which my friend actually read My Year of Rest and Relaxation by Otessa Moshfegh, and she talked about how the book was really bad and how she didn't like it at all. And she predicted like the end at the beginning of the book. It goes for me as well. I didn't read My Year of Rest and Relaxation by her, but I did read Lapvona, and I didn't like it. This is again one of those books that just isn't memorable. I don't remember the plot of it. I don't remember the story. I just remember that it's in medieval time. And I remember one other thing that made me dislike this book so much. Because this is like a little village, we have our village grandmother, or however you call it, and she has a lot of milk, so she feeds all the children when they're little, and she continues to feed him. One particular scene in which she kind of uses that he doesn't. Oh my god. Okay. She kind of uses that he is a bit different and he doesn't have complete understanding of everything. She assaults him. She SAs him, and then it's written like, oh, she feels so terrible about it, she will never do it again. She's still one of those characters that at the end of the book is not written as such a bad, awful person, even though she just did this. And it's just brushed upon, this scene, and I hated it. I hated that. It was just so, oh yeah, this happened. Moving on, what? You cannot do that. I firstly don't know why you need to put that scene in this book. It was not doing anything to this book. It was just for shock factor, which I was shocked, definitely, but not in a good way. And yeah, I just hated it, and it made me dislike this book even more. So it doesn't have any plot that I can remember of, but that scene was awful. And there's this other scene with grapes that, if you read this book, you know what I'm talking about, but if you didn't, I hope you don't. Honestly, I hope you don't read this book. It's just not a good book for me. Yeah. No, I didn't like this book. The next book is Unravel the Dusk by Elizabeth Lim. Now, this one I don't have such big opinions on. This is the second in a series, The Blood of Stars, I believe it's called. So this is second and last installment in the series. Honestly, I was so confused reading this book. So the thing about these books is they're obviously trying to be fitted in a duology, right? And I feel like duology works for some stories, but for others does not. This book felt so rushed. Pacing of the book was awful. I mean, truly awful pacing. I was so confused about how much time has passed. The characters, all the characters and all of their personality was just said, like, in one word or two, and then they would be gone. Like, it just felt like it needed to be a longer book or a longer series. But again, I don't know if that would work because the whole story isn't such a big important story that you can write a series about it. So the way that the characters were evolved, I did not like in this book at all. Our main character, I didn't care for again in this book. I cared for her in first book. I cared for her. In this book, her love interest just comes and goes as he pleases. And she is trying to fight something, and then she just kind of fights it off at the end, and that's it. And I was so mad at this book because it was so bad. The pacing was so bad, and I know that this is a duology that a lot of people like, and I saw that a lot of people are talking about it like one of the best YA duologies out there. The first book, honestly, I read because it was commercialized as this book that is kind of like Mulan but with sewing contest, and the sewing contest in this book and part that she's like a man in the first book I'm now talking about, it's such a small part of the book. It's not even the main story of the book. So yeah, just a disappointing overall series, disappointed in it. But yeah, I'll move on. Next book I have is one book that I read quite recently, and I actually talked about this book in my fall recommendations, and I said that I personally did not enjoy this book, but that would be Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies. Yes, I did not enjoy this book at all. I had such big expectations of this book because I love fairies, and I always wanted a book about fairies as this little awful tiny creatures, and this did not deliver at all. I know that a lot of people truly love this book, and it's even people who do not read this kind of genre like this book a lot. I did not. The main reason why I didn't like this book is because main character is insufferable. She's the worst. She is such an awful person. There is no explanation why, and I get that there does not need to be an explanation for everything in the book, but it was just unnecessary how awful she was. And then love interest, so he is as he is, this weird kooky guy. I didn't feel any kind of tension between them, and then somewhere at the end of the book he just kind of goes, "Oh, will you marry me? I love you from the beginning. I saw you from the first time I saw you. I loved you." And she goes, "Yeah, fine, okay," even though throughout the whole book she was telling us that it's so sad that he's the only friend she has, and that, "Oh, I hate him, he's so insufferable. Okay, I'm gonna marry you, I love you now." My nose itches when I have a lot of opinions. Yeah, I just hated her so much. And the story, I thought it's going to be more based around the fairies. It's more based around her being like a Grinch and her heart getting big, and she now cares for these villagers and she wants to help them. Yeah, you are a 30-year-old woman who should know that it's not awful thing to care about people, and you need to help people. I'm not going to pick up the second book in this series. Definitely, I heard that in the second book she's even more insufferable, so I know people love it, this series, and good on you, but and one other thing, the pacing at the end of the book, when something happens, it just all jumbled. Don't know what happened there, but I felt like the end was really rushed again. I just feel like a lot of these books have rushed endings. The next book I have, I'm kind of sad that I didn't like, because I don't think it's a bad book or it's badly written or anything. It's just that I have other expectations from this author, and that would be Tress of the Emerald Sea by Brandon Sanderson. This book was again on like top 5 books, like top 5 books in 2023. And people loved this book. They truly, truly loved this book. And I read it, and I didn't feel any particular way about it. I thought it was okay. I thought it was fine. One thing I will say is that I will never stop being amazed by Sanderson's magic systems and how he just, the storytelling of it all. I will never stop being amazed about that, but this book just wasn't for me, I guess. I wouldn't put this book on a list if I didn't like other cozy fantasy book, because I thought that maybe cozy fantasy isn't for me, but then I read Legends and Lattes and I loved that. So it's not that I necessarily don't like books with high stakes, it's just that it needs to be made in a certain way for me to like it, and this one just wasn't. It was really fun to read, it was really magical and everything. I just don't... it's... no. I expect a certain writing from Sanderson and a certain stakes that he... and I love his books because of the stakes in them, and this one just then didn't deliver on it. So I'm sad to say that, but I still love Sanderson. He's still one of my favorite authors. I'm still going to pick up other books by him, but this one is definitely like one of the worst books that I read by him so far. So yeah, he kind of reached a wider audience with this book, I feel like, so I'm glad because of that. The next place, I have actually 2 books, because there's a similar reason why I didn't enjoy any of them. That would be The Color of Magic and The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. Please don't come for me in the comments or anywhere, but I am well aware these are not the same genre of books. One is sci-fi book, the other one is fantasy, but they both are kind of comedic books, right? That's why I put them here, because both of these books I didn't like because of the comedy in them. I just don't think that writing style is for me. So for Color of Magic, it was just so jumbled that I didn't understand what was happening. There was too many things happening at once. It is the first in Discworld series. I'm not opposed to trying to read some other book in Discworld series, especially like Death Cycle, but it's definitely not on my priority list. And The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, again, the comedy in it, you know, both of those books were like, oh, it's funny for first 100 pages, and then it kind of becomes annoying for me. I just don't think I'm the audience for that kind of style. Okay, the next one I talked about again in one of my latest videos because I just read it, but it is one of the most popular books in this genre, in this mystery thriller genres, and that would be The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo. Didn't like this book at all. The reason why, it's because I think for me it was way too long. The story was just going on and it was just like, I felt like I liked it in the beginning, and then as it went on, it just got worse and worse and worse, and by the end I felt like I'm reading a completely different story. There's like this middle part that I just feel like it's a different book based on the first part and the last part. I did, however, thought the mystery part of the killing was fun. Other mystery parts were not fun at all. There was also this corporate talk that I didn't completely understand, and it's not that I didn't understand it because I didn't understand the words, but I just didn't know why is there so many pages of it when it's not that important for me to enjoy the story. It just kind of made me enjoy the story a lot less. The end of the book, I was so happy that it finally ended. I just felt such a relief when it ended because I didn't need to read it anymore. So that's how I felt about this book. Okay, now we're at the top 3 books that I feel like are the most controversial books here, because these books are very well loved in the community, and I just sorry, but first one is Misery by Stephen King. So this is, I think, thought as one of the best works by Stephen King, definitely. There's a film adaptation of it. So I really wanted to read it. I think that maybe where I went wrong with it is that I read it in my first year of high school. So when I was like 15, 14, I think I was 15. So it was kind of a bit too much for me. I will give to this book, the title really does, it does explain how I felt while reading this book, because I was miserable. I was truly miserable reading this book. I felt like this book had a lot of parts. So there's this torture, the like torture of this author by his biggest fan. There were just some parts that were, I felt like, shocking just to be shocking. They weren't something that was needed in the book. I just didn't like that because it was just too much for me. It was not something that I needed from this book. I don't mind blood, I don't mind gore in books if that's something that I know book is about, but this one just I felt like it shouldn't have been that. The next book I have on my list is the only book on this list that I can say that I truly, truly hated, and I still hate from the bottom of my heart. A lot of people think of this as their favorite book ever, and I'm glad for you, but I don't share that opinion. I had this book. I got rid of it. Thankfully, somebody wanted to buy it. I sold it for like €2 because I just wanted to get rid of it. I didn't want to have it anymore in my collection at all. This one was a bit weird for me because before reading Norwegian Wood, I did read 2 other books by Haruki Murakami, and I thought of them as... First one that I read was After Dark, and when I read it, it was, I considered one of my most favorite books ever. And the second one I read is short stories, and that was Elephant Vanishes. In Norwegian Wood, it's really, really obvious that women characters are quite the same. We have, I believe, 3 characters that are all existing because our main male character. And of course, they're all in love with him. Doesn't matter the age difference at all. They're all completely in love with him because he's such a good person, which I don't think, but okay. Besides him being kind of misogynistic, and as I saw some of his interview, I cemented that statement as being true, that he's kind of a misogynist. There was, again, this essay scene, between a child and adult woman. I don't know why you need to have this in the book. This didn't bring anything to the book. Again, hated it even more after I read it. But basically, there's this scene where we have one of our lady characters, and she talks about what happened a few years back when she was, I don't know, in her early 30s or late 20s. She was tutoring this little girl. She was a piano tutor, and this little girl tried to have a relation with her. She didn't know how to say no. She's blaming this little girl as it's not my fault, it's her because she wanted it and she started it. And the book is written in a way that it's on the side of this woman who did this to the little girl. It's explaining how she's actually in the right because this little girl was weird. I couldn't believe when I read the scene that it was actually written that way. After that scene, I knew that it cannot get worse than that. And I just, that's why I honestly, truly hate this book. It's probably one of the worst books that I've ever read, if not the worst book I've ever read. The last book that I have is probably very controversial because it's, one of the classics that people truly, truly love and rave about all the time. The reason why I don't like it, it's kind of petty, and that would be Frankenstein by Mary Shelley. Just to be transparent, I do enjoy the story of Frankenstein. I do enjoy it in different formats. I read it in manga format because Junji Ito rewrote it in manga format. I talked about Archidas Progeny, which was just written inspired by Frankenstein's story. It's safe to say that I quite enjoy Frankenstein, Victor Frankenstein and his monster. I did not like this book. I mean, I can't say that I did not like the whole book. This part of the book just made me... It's so petty. scary that it just made me dislike it. If you don't know the story, again, spoiler, but I mean, you probably know already what happens in Frankenstein. It's so famous. This Frankenstein's monster escapes Victor. He goes into the woods and he starts living there in this kind of shed. There's this cabin, and in the cabin there are these people, and he's listening to them through the shed for a few, I believe it's like 2 to 3 years he's there, and he's listening to them talk, learning from them. After that, he again finds Frankenstein. He talks to him. The way he talks to him, and he's explaining this, is with a massive vocabulary of words, like he's some kind of a poet or author, and he knows so much about the world. The thing is, he listened to the people in woods in one cabin talking, people that live there, and I get it. It's, you know, that's really petty of me, but when you make it one of the main points in the story, Frankenstein wanting to learn more about the world, and he wants to fit in, he doesn't want to be this monster, and he's trying that, then I needed to be more explainable, because it was not explainable. I am well aware it's pretty petty of me. I am well aware when it was written, and that when it was written, it was, you know, such a nuance in that age. That's why I don't like Frankenstein, the book, as much. So there you guys go. Those are some of my controversial opinions of the books that I don't like, that everybody else likes. I hope you will not be too mad at me. Even if you like any of these books, I'm sorry if I offended you. It's fine. We do not all have the same opinions. It makes book world and book community so much more interesting if we are all not on the same wavelength all the time. Thank you for watching. If you want to subscribe, you can do that. That's it. I'll see you in my next video. Bye.